There are moments before sleep when the veil between the conscious and the divine becomes thin, when the noise of the world fades and something sacred listens. Edgar Cayce called this the most powerful time to reach the higher self, the moment when the mind becomes the doorway to Christ consciousness. He said that the thoughts and words you hold before sleep don't vanish into the dark. They vibrate within the soul, shaping the world you will wake up to. Tonight, what if you spoke words that could align your soul with the living Christ within you? Not a distant God, not a figure outside of you, but the divine spark Cayce said resides in every human being. 7 simple words, 7 vibrations that open the channel to peace, healing, and spiritual awakening. Stay until the end, because once you understand what these 7 words truly mean, you'll never fall asleep the same way again. Before we continue, write in the comments, do you believe your last thoughts before sleep can connect you to God? As you close your eyes tonight, something sacred happens. The body prepares for rest, but the soul begins its most active work. Edgar Cayce said that the hours of sleep are not an escape from life. They are the time when the spirit leaves the limits of the flesh to commune with higher planes of consciousness. He explained that during sleep, the mind is closest to its original source, the divine mind. And whatever thoughts you carry into that sacred silence become the blueprint for your spiritual awakening. In one of his documented readings, Cayce revealed that the soul uses the hours of rest to align with the Christ vibration, the purest frequency of love that ever existed. But most people waste those hours by filling their minds with worry, resentment, or fear. He said, "The last thought before sleep is the seed that blooms in the subconscious and bears fruit in your life." So, what if your last thought was sacred? What if 7 simple words, spoken with faith and sincerity, could realign you with the Christ within? Cayce's readings always pointed to one truth. The Christ consciousness is not a distant idea, it is the divine pattern placed in every soul. It's not about believing in a figure far away in time. It's about awakening that same light that Jesus fully embodied. The light that already lives in you, waiting to be recognized. But to awaken it, your words, emotions, and intentions must be in harmony. Cayce often said that every word carries vibration, and that vibration either brings you closer to God or separates you from Him. That's why before sleep, the words you speak are not just sounds, they are forces. They echo through the mind, shape the soul, and attract what matches their energy. The first of these 7 words, Cayce said, begins everything. It opens the door, it breaks the wall between the conscious and the divine. It is the word that reminds the soul of its origin, the word love. Love, Cayce said, is the creative force of the universe. It's not human emotion but divine energy, the vibration from which all things were made. God is love, he often repeated, not as poetry but as spiritual law. When you say the word love before sleep, you call that law into motion within your soul. It begins to cleanse the mind from fear and judgment. It restores the connection between your heart and the Christ pattern within. The act is simple, but the effect is infinite. Cayce said that even a single sincere thought of love before sleep can alter the vibration of your entire night, bringing healing and renewal to the body and peace to the mind. So tonight, before you close your eyes, whisper that word, not as a wish, but as a remembrance. Love. Feel it fill your chest. Feel it rise through your breath. Let it move through you until it quiets every shadow. Because that is how awakening begins, not with miracles from the outside, but with a gentle remembrance from within. And as we continue, we will uncover the next word, the one Cayce said aligns the will of the human soul with the will of God. But before we go deeper, take a moment. If this message has already stirred something in you, if you feel that invisible warmth of truth inside, support this work by liking this video and subscribing. Share in the comments what the word love means to you tonight, and let's continue this journey together. Cayce often said that love is the door, but the soul cannot walk through it without surrender. That is why the second word is faith. When Cayce spoke about faith, he didn't mean blind belief or empty prayer. He meant the deep inner certainty that your spirit belongs to something eternal, something guided by divine law. In his readings, he described faith as the invisible thread that keeps the soul aligned with its creator, even when the mind cannot see the path ahead. He said, "Faith is knowing that God is and that His Spirit is within you." When you whisper the word faith before sleep, you remind your inner being that you are not drifting in darkness. You are being carried by purpose. It doesn't matter what you're facing. Illness, fear, doubt, loneliness. Faith transforms them all into lessons, not punishments. Cayce explained that this is how the soul evolves, through trust, not control. He often warned that the greatest obstacle to spiritual growth is worry, because worry is the misuse of imagination. It builds barriers between the self and the divine flow. But faith, spoken sincerely before sleep, dissolves those barriers. That tells the subconscious mind, "I release control, I trust divine order." And that single vibration begins to reorganize your inner world. While you sleep, faith becomes the architect of peace. The cells of your body respond to it. Your dreams begin to align with it. The soul, freed from fear, rises toward its higher pattern. Cayce said that many of our physical and emotional illnesses come from the mind's resistance to this divine rhythm. But when faith replaces anxiety, the spirit can finally heal what the body cannot. In one reading, Cayce said something few have truly understood. The mind is the builder. Every thought is a seed, every word a form. When those forms are filled with faith, they mirror the vibration of the Christ who trusted even in the face of death. That same trust lives within you. It's not a gift to be earned. It's an inheritance to be remembered. And as you drift towards sleep, saying the words love and faith, you begin to reshape the pattern of your soul. You are no longer falling into unconsciousness. You are entering communion. Your spirit begins to ascend, not away from the body, but toward its divine source. But Cayce didn't stop there. He said that once love and faith take root, the soul is ready for the next vibration, one that many resist because it requires humility. The third word, he said, is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the gate through which no pride can pass. It demands that you release the weight of judgment, both toward others and toward yourself. Cayce explained that most spiritual suffering comes from hidden resentment, from the energy of guilt or anger left unresolved. And when we sleep, those emotions replay themselves in the subconscious, shaping our reality. That is why he advised, before sleep, forgive. Speak it aloud. I forgive. It doesn't matter if the person deserves it. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for the soul that seeks freedom. Cayce said, as you forgive, so are you forgiven. That law is not punishment, it's balance. When you forgive, the soul is cleansed of karmic memory. It releases the cords that bind it to pain. Saying the word forgiveness before sleep tells your inner self that you are ready to evolve beyond resentment, that you choose peace over pride. And in that choice, you begin to awaken the Christ within. Because Christ consciousness, Cayce said, is perfect love expressed through perfect forgiveness. It's the vibration that sees no separation, no enemies, no past too dark to be redeemed. Each night, you can move one step closer to that light by choosing these words with sincerity. So tonight, before you rest, speak slowly, love, faith, forgiveness. Feel how each word changes the rhythm of your breath, how your body softens, how your heart feels lighter. These are not mere affirmations, they are spiritual keys, ancient frequencies that Cayce said connect human consciousness with the divine. And remember, awakening is not a single moment. It's a practice repeated in stillness, night after night. The more consistent you are, the more natural the light of Christ becomes within you. We've uncovered 3 of the 7 words, and each one builds upon the last. The next one, Cayce said, is the vibration that transforms fear into peace and opens the soul fully to the presence of God. But before we continue, take a second to breathe. If this message has touched something inside you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. That simple act helps this message reach more souls seeking the same light you're awakening to. Write in the comments which of these 3 words, love, faith, or forgiveness, has spoken most deeply to your heart tonight. The 4th word is peace. Cayce said that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the awareness of God's presence in the midst of it. In hundreds of readings, he repeated the same principle. In peace, there is power. He explained that the vibration of peace is the same vibration that sustained Jesus through the storm, the same energy that allows the soul to remain calm when the world is in chaos. When you say peace before sleep, you are not asking for silence outside of you. You are commanding stillness within you. You are reminding your mind that God is not found in noise, but in the quiet certainty that all things are working according to divine law. Cayce taught that the spirit cannot commune with the higher planes if it is disturbed by anxiety or anger. So he recommended that before you close your eyes, you breathe deeply and affirm peace, not as a wish, but as a state of being. This single word has the power to change the chemistry of the body. Cayce said that peace restores the nervous system, balances the glands, and opens the pineal center, the seat of spiritual perception. In this state, the subconscious becomes receptive to divine inspiration. Dreams become more luminous, more meaningful, and when you wake, you carry that vibration into your day. He warned that those who go to bed in conflict attract confusion in sleep, while those who go to bed in peace awaken with clarity. Keep the mind and body at peace, he said, and the soul will speak. So, as you rest tonight, let that word rise from your heart. Peace. Feel it radiate through your body. Feel it dissolve every tension, every fear. This is the stillness where God speaks. And when peace settles in, another door opens, the one that Cayce called gratitude. Gratitude is the fifth word, and it holds one of the highest vibrations of the human spirit. Cayce said that thanksgiving is not just a polite response to blessings, it's a spiritual magnet that draws the soul closer to divine supply. Give thanks for what you have, he said, and you will receive more of it. Gratitude shifts the focus of consciousness from lack to abundance, from fear to trust. When you say thank you before sleep, not to a person but to God, you are tuning your soul to the rhythm of creation itself, because in the universe, whatever you appreciate multiplies. He often reminded his followers that gratitude is the language of faith in action. When you feel thankful even before your prayer is answered, you are already living in alignment with divine law. Cayce said that the soul cannot enter higher realms of awareness without this vibration. Gratitude transforms the ordinary into sacred, the pain into growth, the night into light. As you lie in bed, whisper, "Thank you." Not as a routine, but as communion. Thank you for the breath that sustains me. Thank you for the lessons I don't yet understand. Thank you for the unseen hands guiding my path. In that moment, you are no longer a seeker, you are a co-creator. Cayce described gratitude as the consciousness of God made active. It dissolves self-pity, guilt, and despair, because it shifts focus from what is missing to what is eternal. He said that even the angels respond to a thankful heart because its vibration harmonizes with the music of heaven. When you sleep in gratitude, your dreams are clearer, your healing deeper, and your awakening brighter. Love opens the heart, faith strengthens the will, forgiveness purifies the soul, peace calms the mind, and gratitude connects all of them in one current of divine remembrance. These 5 vibrations already begin to awaken Christ consciousness within you, but Cayce said there are 2 more words, 2 final keys that complete the transformation. He called the 6th word the bridge between the human and the divine. It is the vibration that turns knowledge into action, thought into manifestation, and belief into service. It's the energy that moves love from theory into reality. But this one, he said, requires courage, because it demands that the soul lives what it believes. The 6th word is service. Cayce said that love becomes divine only when it is expressed through action. Service, he taught, is the highest form of prayer. It is not about grand gestures or being seen by others. It's about the quiet choices you make each day that bring light into someone else's darkness. When you live to help, to heal, to listen, you are living as the Christ lived. Cayce explained that service is the proof of spiritual maturity. It is where the soul begins to act as a channel of God's will rather than its own desires. He said that when you serve another without expecting anything in return, you become a vessel through which divine energy flows. That energy doesn't just bless the other person. It also heals you. As you help others, you help yourself, he said, because in truth there is no separation between souls. Before sleep, when you speak the word service, you remind your spirit of its purpose. You tell your soul, I am here to be useful to God, not just to be comforted by Him. Cayce said that many souls reincarnate again and again simply because they refuse to learn the joy of service. They seek to be loved but not to love, to be healed but not to heal. Yet in the rhythm of the divine, giving and receiving are one. Service breaks the illusion of self and awakens unity with the Creator. So when you say this word tonight, let it be a vow. I am a servant of the light. Those words, spoken sincerely, shift the entire vibration of your being. You will feel it, the warmth in your chest, the calm certainty that your existence has meaning beyond yourself. Cayce said that the Christ within is not awakened by comfort, but by compassion. The soul grows when it gives, and each act of service, no matter how small, sends ripples through eternity. That is why he urged his followers to end every day asking, have I made someone's path easier? Because that single question keeps the ego silent and the heart awake. The vibration of service is the movement of divine will through human hands. And when you sleep with that thought, you prepare the soul for the final word, the vibration that Cayce said unites all others, the one that turns the human spirit fully toward God. That seventh word, he said, is oneness. It is the realization that everything you've been seeking has never been outside of you. Oneness is not an idea. It's a state of consciousness where the soul finally remembers its origin. Cayce said, the spirit of the Christ is the pattern of every soul. And to awaken that truth is to see no division between yourself and God, between you and others, between heaven and earth. It is to recognize that every thought of love, every act of forgiveness, every breath of gratitude is God expressing Himself through you. Before sleep, when you whisper oneness, you are not trying to reach God. You are acknowledging that you were never apart. In this state, fear dissolves. There is no death, no loneliness, no lack. The soul rests in perfect awareness, knowing it is part of the infinite mind of the Creator. Cayce said that when you fall asleep with this realization, your spirit travels to higher planes of learning, what he called the halls of wisdom, where the soul receives guidance, healing, and renewal. He described these as realms of pure light, where the sound of divine harmony vibrates through everything, and when the body awakens, that vibration lingers. You feel lighter, wiser, more connected. You begin to see the world differently, not as a battlefield of separate beings, but as one great body of God, expressing love through countless forms. So tonight, before you sleep, remember the 7 words: love, faith, forgiveness, peace, gratitude, service, and oneness. Speak them slowly, with reverence. Feel them as frequencies, not just thoughts. Each word lifts your vibration closer to the Christ pattern that Cayce said is the destiny of every soul. This is how you awaken, not through external miracles, but through inner remembrance. Every night is an opportunity to return home. Let these 7 words be your bridge between the physical and the divine. And if this message has opened your heart, if it made you feel that sacred call to live closer to God, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share your experience in the comments. Tell us which of these words resonates most deeply with your soul tonight. Your story might be the light that helps someone else find their way back to the source. Cayce said that awakening to Christ consciousness is not a single revelation, but a daily remembrance. Each night becomes a sacred classroom where the soul rehearses eternity. These 7 words are not random. They are the blueprint of your spiritual anatomy. Love opens the heart. Faith strengthens the will. Forgiveness purifies the past. Peace calms the mind. Gratitude aligns the soul with divine supply. Service activates divine purpose. And oneness completes the circle, returning you to the source from which you came. Every time you repeat them before sleep, you are not performing a ritual. You are programming your soul with divine memory. Cayce said, the soul learns by applying what it already knows. These words help you remember what your spirit has known since the beginning, that you are a child of God, eternal, creative, and filled with the same light that lived in Jesus. He explained that Christ consciousness is not something we earn after death. It's something we awaken to while living. It is the realization that the kingdom of heaven is within. Each word spoken before sleep becomes a key turning in the lock of your own awareness. And the reason it happens most powerfully at night is because during sleep, the ego releases control. The conscious mind quiets, and the subconscious, the gateway to the soul, opens. In that stillness, your words become laws, shaping the currents of energy that flow through the unseen parts of you. Cayce said that what the mind accepts before sleep is impressed upon the soul, and what the soul holds becomes experience in waking life. So if your final thoughts are fear, you manifest chaos. But if your final words are love, you invite divine order. He urged his followers to never fall asleep in anger, resentment, or despair, because the hours of rest are sacred. They are the time when the soul travels, learns, and heals. If the mind is disturbed, the soul remains tethered to confusion. But if the last vibration you send into the universe is faith, forgiveness, or gratitude, your spirit moves freely into higher planes. There, Cayce said, angels, or what he called helpers of light, guide the soul, strengthening it for the days ahead. That's why your last words matter more than your last actions of the day. They define the direction your spirit takes while you sleep. Cayce's teachings were always practical, never mystical for the sake of mystery. He believed that spirituality should be lived, not admired. So if you wish to awaken Christ consciousness, start with small acts. Say the 7 words every night for 7 nights. Speak them slowly, breathe after each one, and imagine their vibration radiating from your heart. Observe how your dreams shift. Notice how you wake up lighter, more patient, more compassionate. The transformation is subtle at first, but it deepens. Soon you'll find yourself responding to life differently, less reactive, more centered, more aware of the divine rhythm in everything. That is the evidence that the Christ within you is awakening. Cayce said that when the Christ consciousness is fully active in a person, they see the divine in every soul, even in those who harm them. They see purpose in suffering, beauty in simplicity, eternity in the present moment. Let your life become a channel of blessings, he said, and you will find that you are already in heaven. These teachings were not meant to be worshipped, they were meant to be lived. Because heaven is not a destination. It's a vibration, a state of being that you can enter tonight before you close your eyes. So tonight, as you lie in silence and darkness, remember that you are not alone. Cayce said that every soul is surrounded by light, the same light that spoke the universe into being. That light is Christ within you, waiting to be recognized. When you whisper these 7 words before sleep, you are not performing a ritual. You are speaking the language of your own divine origin. Each word is a spark, and together they form the fire of awakening. Love reminds you that you are a creation of God. Faith connects you to His infinite wisdom. Forgiveness frees you from the chains of yesterday. Peace restores the temple of your body. Gratitude opens the gates of abundance. Service channels the will of heaven through your hands. And oneness brings you home. Cayce described this practice as aligning your soul with the pattern of the Christ. He said that this pattern exists within everyone, but it lies dormant until you choose to live it. And the choice begins in thought. The words you speak before sleep are your final act of creation for the day. They travel into the silence, carrying the blueprint of your intentions, and the universe answers. That is why your final thoughts have the power to heal, to guide, to transform. They are seeds planted in the garden of eternity. If you fill them with love, your life will bear love. If you fill them with peace, your path will shine with clarity. In his lifetime, Edgar Cayce gave more than 14,000 readings. Over and over, he returned to the same truth. Seek the Christ within. He never asked anyone to worship him or follow a church. He asked them to live in harmony with divine law, to see God in the everyday, to make the invisible visible through compassion, humility, and service. He said that awakening is not about escaping the world, but about sanctifying it. When you live with the consciousness of Christ, every action becomes prayer, every breath becomes gratitude, and even sleep becomes a continuation of creation. So as this night begins, close your eyes and let your heart whisper those 7 sacred words. Feel the vibration of each one echo through your being, uniting body, mind, and soul in perfect harmony. You are not calling for something to come to you. You are remembering what has always been there. In the silence, in the stillness, God waits for recognition. And when you finally say those words, when you let go of fear and remember who you are, you will awaken not just in the morning, but in eternity itself. If this message spoke to your soul, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more reflections on Edgar Cayce's wisdom. Share in the comments which of these 7 words you will carry into your sleep tonight, and let this community become a circle of light, guiding others toward their own awakening. Because every soul that remembers its divine origin adds another spark to the world's darkness, and together we become the light that Christ intended us to be. Edgar Cayce told a desperate mother in 1936 that adding a specific type of salt to her dying child's bath would save his life within 3 days. The child had been given up by doctors, his body racked with a mysterious illness that left him unable to walk or speak. 3 days later, the boy was running through their Virginia home completely healed. But here's what's even more shocking about this case. Cayce revealed that salt isn't just a healing agent, it's a direct connection to your soul's memory and the divine blueprint hidden within your very cells. What you're about to discover will fundamentally change how you see this simple substance sitting in your kitchen cabinet. In the next 25 minutes, I'll reveal why ancient biblical texts encrypted salt as a spiritual technology, how your body uses salt to maintain psychic connections, and the specific technique Cayce used to activate dormant spiritual abilities through salt that worked for thousands of documented cases. If you're ready to unlock secrets that have been hidden for millennia, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this information could transform your spiritual journey forever. The year was 1934 when Edgar Cayce entered one of his most profound trance states. His stenographer, Gladys Davis, sat ready to record what would become one of the most revolutionary spiritual revelations of the 20th century. But what came through that day about salt left even his closest associates stunned into silence. Cayce began speaking in his characteristic trance voice, explaining that salt wasn't merely a mineral or preservative as science understood it. According to the consciousness speaking through him, salt was what he called a crystallized memory of divine intention, a physical substance that held the vibrational blueprint of creation itself. But wait, there's more to this story that will blow your mind. In that same reading, Cayce revealed that every grain of salt contains what he termed atomic prayers, microscopic patterns that resonate with the same frequency as human consciousness. He explained that when salt dissolves in water, especially when blessed or prayed over, it creates a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms that can be measured and experienced. The woman who requested this reading had been suffering from what doctors called an incurable blood disorder. Cayce told her to dissolve sea salt in blessed water and drink it while reciting specific affirmations he provided. Within 6 weeks, her blood work returned to normal levels, and her doctors were baffled by what they called a spontaneous remission. Here's what Cayce discovered in one of his most disturbing readings about why salt appears over 35 times in biblical texts, and it's not what religious scholars have been teaching for centuries. During a session that shocked his stenographer, Cayce explained that when Jesus called his disciples salt of the earth, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was revealing an actual spiritual technology that the disciples were meant to understand and use. According to Cayce's source, salt was the physical anchor that allowed advanced souls to maintain their spiritual consciousness while incarnated in human form. The reading went deeper, explaining that salt's crystalline structure mirrors the geometric patterns found in what Cayce called the Akashic records, that cosmic library of all souls' experiences. When you consume salt mindfully, you're literally ingesting crystallized wisdom that helps your soul remember its purpose and mission in this lifetime. This changes everything about consciousness, prayer, and healing. In documented cases from the ARE archives, Cayce recommended specific salt protocols for accessing past life memories, enhancing psychic abilities, and accelerating spiritual growth. One man from Kentucky followed Cayce's salt meditation technique and within 3 months reported vivid recall of 17 previous incarnations, complete with names, locations, and life lessons that transformed his understanding of his current relationships and career path. But here's where this gets really interesting, and in 3 minutes, I'll reveal the case that terrified even Cayce's assistants. Cayce taught that your body contains what he called salt wisdom centers, specific locations where salt concentrates to maintain spiritual communication pathways. These aren't just physical processes, they're literal antennae for divine guidance. Your tears contain the highest concentration of spiritually active salt, which is why crying during prayer or meditation often leads to breakthrough insights and emotional healing. The human brain floats in cerebrospinal fluid that contains precise salt ratios essential for what Cayce termed soul-brain communication. When these ratios become imbalanced through poor diet or spiritual disconnection, people experience what he called soul static, that feeling of being lost, purposeless, or spiritually numb that plagues millions of Americans today. Now here's the case that left Cayce's team speechless. A woman brought her husband to Virginia Beach in 1938. He'd been in what doctors called a vegetative state for 8 months following a car accident. His family had traveled from Oklahoma, spending their life savings on conventional treatments that had failed completely. In desperation, they sought Cayce's help. During the reading, Cayce instructed them to prepare baths using sea salt from a specific region, blessed with particular prayers, administered at precise times aligned with lunar cycles. He explained that the man's soul had become unanchored from his physical form, and the salt would serve as a spiritual magnet to draw his consciousness back into his body. The family was skeptical but desperate. They followed Cayce's instructions exactly. On the 7th day, the man opened his eyes and spoke his first words in 8 months. Within 3 weeks, he was walking and had recovered most of his cognitive function. Doctors had no explanation for what they witnessed. But wait, there's something even more profound about this healing that connects to secrets hidden in your own body right now. Cayce revealed that this man's recovery wasn't just physical healing. It was proof that salt serves as a bridge between dimensions of consciousness. The salt didn't just heal his brain, it restored his soul's connection to his physical form. This understanding opens up incredible possibilities for anyone dealing with depression, anxiety, or feeling spiritually lost. Your body produces salt through various processes, but Cayce taught that spiritually conscious salt production, meaning salt created through prayer, meditation, and positive intention, carries different vibrational properties than ordinary salt. This is why tears of joy heal differently than tears of sorrow, and why the salt in your body responds to your spiritual state. Here's what Cayce discovered about salt that modern science is just beginning to understand. In readings from the 1940s, Cayce explained that salt crystals have memory capacity. They can store and transmit vibrational information, much like how we now know crystals can store digital data. When you bless salt or pray over it, you're literally programming it with intention and divine connection that your body can access and utilize. Archaeological evidence supports Cayce's claims about salt's spiritual significance across ancient cultures. From the Dead Sea Scrolls references to sacred salt rituals, to Himalayan salt deposits that formed millions of years ago, carrying what geologists call impossible mineral combinations, to Native American salt ceremonies that mirror techniques Cayce described in trance, the evidence points to salt being far more than a simple mineral. In one of his most documented cases, a young woman suffering from what we'd now recognize as severe PTSD came to Cayce after witnessing a traumatic event during World War II. Conventional therapy had failed, and she was considering institutionalization. Cayce's reading prescribed a specific salt treatment that involved dissolving blessed salt in water and using it for both internal consumption and external baths while engaging in particular prayer practices. The transformation was remarkable and witnessed by multiple people. Within 6 weeks, her nightmares stopped, her anxiety decreased dramatically, and she reported feeling spiritually cleansed for the first time since the trauma. She credited the salt treatment with saving her life and went on to help other trauma survivors using the same technique. This reveals something crucial about how salt works on the soul level that you need to understand. According to Cayce's readings, trauma and negative experiences create what he called soul debris. energetic residue that interferes with your spiritual clarity and divine connection. Salt, when used with proper spiritual intention, acts as a purifying agent that can dissolve this debris and restore your soul's natural radiance. But here's where modern Americans can apply this ancient wisdom in practical ways that will transform your daily spiritual practice. Cayce taught specific techniques for charging salt with spiritual intention. He recommended holding salt in your hands while praying or meditating, allowing your life force energy to infuse the crystals with divine purpose. This charged salt could then be used in cooking, baths, or even carried as a spiritual tool for protection and clarity. The process is simple but powerful. Take sea salt or Himalayan salt in your palm, close your eyes, and focus on your deepest spiritual intentions. Visualize divine light flowing through your hands into the salt crystals. Feel gratitude for this gift from the earth, and ask that the salt serve your highest good and spiritual evolution. One businessman from New York followed this practice religiously after hearing about Cayce's work secondhand. He charged salt each morning during meditation and used it in his coffee and meals throughout the day. Within 3 months, he reported dramatically improved intuition in business decisions, deeper prayer experiences, and what he described as constant awareness of divine guidance in his daily life. But wait, there's an even more powerful technique that Cayce revealed for accessing past life memories and soul purpose through salt work. During readings in the late 1930s, Cayce described what he called salt scrying, a method for receiving divine guidance and soul memories using salt and water. The technique involves dissolving blessed salt in spring water while asking specific questions about your soul's mission or seeking guidance on life decisions. As the salt dissolves, practitioners enter a meditative state and observe the patterns, images, or impressions that arise. Cayce taught that the dissolving salt creates a vibrational bridge to the Akashic records, allowing souls to access their own cosmic history and divine purpose. A teacher from California documented her experiences with this technique over 6 months. She reported receiving clear guidance about career changes, relationship decisions, and spiritual practices that led to what she described as living my authentic soul mission for the first time in my life. Her journal entries, preserved in ARE archives, detail specific insights and predictions that proved accurate over time. This connects to something profound about salt's role in biblical prophecy and spiritual awakening that most people have never heard. Cayce revealed that the biblical references to salt weren't just symbolic, but described actual spiritual technologies that advanced souls were meant to understand and use. When Lot's wife turned to salt, Cayce explained this wasn't punishment but transformation. Her consciousness had become so identified with lower vibrational states that she literally crystallized into the mineral that could preserve and purify. The salt pillar represented the choice every soul faces: remain attached to lower consciousness or transform into a purifying agent for divine will. This interpretation reframes biblical salt references as instruction manuals for spiritual evolution rather than mere stories or metaphors. Here's what this means for your spiritual journey and awakening process. Your relationship with salt reflects your relationship with spiritual purification and divine will. When you consume salt mindfully, blessing it and acknowledging its sacred nature, you're participating in an ancient practice that connects you to cosmic consciousness and accelerates your spiritual growth. Cayce taught that different types of salt carry different spiritual properties. Sea salt connects you to emotional healing and psychic abilities. Himalayan salt grounds you to earth wisdom and physical vitality. Rock salt from ancient deposits carries what he called time wisdom, access to knowledge from earlier spiritual ages when humanity had greater conscious connection to divine realms. A nurse from Virginia Beach began incorporating Cayce's salt teachings into her meditation practice and patient care work. She reported that patients responded more positively when she blessed the salt used in their IVs and treatments, and her own spiritual sensitivity increased dramatically over 18 months of consistent practice. But here's the most shocking revelation about salt that will change how you see your body's divine design. In readings from 1944, Cayce explained that your body's salt balance directly affects your ability to receive divine guidance and maintain soul consciousness while incarnated. When you're properly mineralized with spiritually conscious salt, your cellular structure becomes more receptive to what he called divine downloads, direct transmission of wisdom, healing, and purpose from higher realms of consciousness. This is why Cayce often recommended specific salt protocols for people seeking to develop psychic abilities or deepen their prayer life. The salt literally tunes your physical form to receive and transmit spiritual frequencies more clearly. Modern research on salt's role in neural conductivity supports Cayce's mystical insights. Your nervous system requires precise salt ratios to function optimally, and your brain's ability to process information depends on proper mineral balance. What science is discovering aligns perfectly with what Cayce revealed about salt's spiritual significance decades ago. A meditation teacher from Colorado began teaching Cayce's salt techniques to her students and documented remarkable results. Students reported deeper meditative states, clearer divine guidance, and accelerated spiritual insights. Several experienced what they described as spiritual initiations during salt-enhanced meditation practices that transformed their understanding of their life purpose. This brings us to the practical applications that can transform your spiritual life starting today. Begin each morning by blessing your salt, whether in your food, bath water, or carried as a spiritual tool. Ask that it serve your highest good and spiritual evolution. Throughout the day, remain conscious of salt as a sacred substance connecting you to divine consciousness rather than mere seasoning or chemical compound. Create a weekly salt bath ritual using sea salt or Himalayan salt dissolved in warm water while praying or setting spiritual intentions. Cayce taught that this practice cleanses both physical toxins and spiritual debris, creating space for divine guidance and soul clarity to emerge. When facing important decisions or seeking spiritual insight, try Cayce's salt scrying technique. Dissolve blessed salt in spring water while focusing on your question. Then meditate and observe what impressions, images, or insights arise as the salt dissolves. The documented evidence from thousands of Cayce's readings demonstrates that salt is far more than a mineral. It's a spiritual technology that can accelerate your awakening, enhance your divine connection, and support your soul's mission in this lifetime. But here's what you need to understand about implementing these practices in your modern life. Consistency matters more than perfection. Start with simple daily salt blessing practices and gradually incorporate more advanced techniques as they feel natural and authentic to your spiritual path. Cayce emphasized that spiritual practices must align with your soul's readiness and authentic calling rather than being forced or performed mechanically. Document your experiences in a journal to track patterns, insights, and transformations that occur as you develop your relationship with salt as a spiritual tool. Many of Cayce's most powerful healing cases began with simple practices that evolved into profound spiritual breakthroughs over time. Connect with others who are exploring these teachings. The ARE community continues to research and apply Cayce's insights, providing support and validation for those walking this spiritual path in modern times. Remember that these aren't New Age inventions, but ancient wisdom that Cayce accessed through his unique gift of cosmic consciousness. The techniques have been tested and validated through thousands of documented cases, spanning decades of careful observation and record-keeping. Your willingness to explore salt as a spiritual tool connects you to a lineage of souls who have used these practices for awakening, healing, and serving divine purpose throughout human history. You're not just learning techniques, you're participating in humanity's spiritual evolution and remembering your soul's divine nature. The salt in your tears, your blood, your cells, carries the memory of your soul's journey through countless lifetimes and dimensions of experience. By working consciously with salt, you're accessing this cosmic memory and allowing it to guide your current incarnation toward its highest expression. As you begin implementing these practices, remain open to the profound transformations that may unfold. Cayce's readings consistently emphasize that spiritual growth accelerates when souls align with natural spiritual technologies like salt work and the documented healing and awakening cases provide inspiring examples of what's possible. Your spiritual journey is unique, but the principles Cayce revealed about salt's sacred nature apply universally to all souls seeking deeper connection to divine consciousness and authentic spiritual expression. If this information has opened new doorways in your understanding, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future revelations from Edgar Cayce's extraordinary legacy. Share this video with others who are ready to explore the deeper mysteries of spiritual awakening and conscious living. The universe has provided simple, accessible tools like salt to support your spiritual evolution. Your willingness to recognize and work with these gifts demonstrates your soul's readiness for the next level of consciousness and divine service that awaits your discovery. There are mysteries within the soul that words were never meant to touch. They live in silence, in that tender space between breath and prayer, where only God listens. Edgar Cayce often reminded us that the soul carries its own language, a vibration beyond speech where truth and grace meet. And he warned that not every truth should be spoken, for words can scatter what spirit intends to sanctify. Some things are not to be hidden out of fear, but to be guarded out of reverence. Cayce was not a prophet of secrecy. He was a servant of Christ. He lived as a man of quiet faith, reading scripture daily, praying before every healing, and asking that each revelation be used for good alone. His gift was not for display. It was a form of service. Through him flowed insights about the eternal nature of the soul, the continuity of life, and the power of thought to shape reality. But woven through all of his readings was one recurring truth. Spiritual power must be held with humility, for its misuse can darken the very light it reveals. He often said that silence is a form of strength and discretion, a form of love. For there are experiences of the soul, encounters with the divine, visions of the eternal, that cannot be translated without distortion. To speak them too soon, or to those not ready to receive them, is to cast pearls before misunderstanding. Even Christ, who was truth made flesh, spoke in parables so that those with ears to hear might awaken in their own time. And so Cayce, reflecting the words of Christ, gently taught that there are sacred things never to be spoken without discernment. They are not forbidden but consecrated. They belong to that inner altar where the soul meets its Creator. These 7 things are not a list of secrets to be feared, but lessons in spiritual lore, each revealing how the divine works within us in stillness, shaping faith through silence. The first of these is the deepest, your personal encounter with God. When the soul touches the infinite, when prayer becomes presence, when peace fills every shadow, that moment is holy beyond speech. To talk of it too freely is to invite misunderstanding from those who have not yet felt such light. It is not pride that restrains the tongue, but reverence. For that which is sacred cannot be contained by language. Cayce once said that the soul's awakening is like a dawn within the heart. It begins in quietness, in the unseen stirring of light before the world takes notice. If we rush to describe it, we may lose its depth. The ego wishes to explain, but the spirit only wishes to live it. So the first thing one should never tell anyone is the full measure of one's encounter with God. Keep it in the silence of gratitude. Let it transform you from within until your life itself becomes the testimony. For every divine experience has its season. It must be absorbed, understood, and anchored before it can be shared. Christ himself told his disciples that there were many things they could not yet bear to hear. Truth matures within us. The seed must remain hidden beneath the soil until the sun calls it forth. And so, in your own journey, protect what is sacred. Speak less of the miracle and more of the humility it brings. Let others see the fruit of your communion, not the words of it. When light is real, it shines without proclamation. The second thing one should never tell anyone is the full story of their inner battles, the silent wars between faith and doubt, between spirit and the shadows that cling to the human heart. Edgar Cayce understood that every soul on earth walks through its own valley of testing. These are not punishments but opportunities for growth, moments when God refines the gold within the soul through the fires of experience. Cayce saw that speaking too openly about these spiritual struggles can weaken their power to heal. When we expose them before they are transmuted into wisdom, we invite the opinions of others to shape what should be guided only by God. There is a sacred privacy in suffering, not secrecy born of shame, but a hidden work of grace. Even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane withdrew from his disciples to pray alone. He invited their presence, but his true communion was with the Father. His anguish was not for display, but for transformation. Cayce's readings taught that the soul's greatest growth occurs when the heart learns to surrender its battles to divine love. Yet that surrender often happens in silence. To speak of one's pain too soon is to step away from the altar before the healing is complete. There are moments when you must let the Holy Spirit finish its work in secret, for others cannot yet understand the language of your tears. This does not mean that we must suffer alone, nor that confession is wrong. It means that discernment is sacred. Share your pain only with those who carry light, who will not judge or feed your wounds but help you see their meaning. Cayce reminded that in the silence of self may be found the voice of God. When we fall quiet before Him, the struggle begins to reveal its lesson, and the lesson becomes peace. The third thing one should never tell anyone is the full vision of one's divine purpose before it is ready to be lived. Every soul was born with a calling, a reason for being that transcends circumstance and time. But divine purpose unfolds like dawn. It cannot be forced or hurried. When we speak of it too early, before faith has matured into strength, we expose it to misunderstanding, envy, or doubt, energies that can cloud what was given in purity. Cayce explained that the pattern of purpose is held in the mind of God, revealed piece by piece through prayer, service, and patience. It is like a melody we learn to hear more clearly as we grow closer to Him. When we announce our mission prematurely, we risk confusing the instrument for the song, the ego for the soul. The world is quick to question what it cannot yet see, and such questioning can shake the tender roots of faith. Christ's life offers the perfect reflection of this law. For 30 years, He lived quietly, hidden within the rhythm of ordinary days, before the time of His ministry arrived. His purpose was known in heaven, but revealed on earth only when it was ready to serve in full power. If the Son of God Himself embraced silence before revelation, how much more should we guard the seeds of our destiny until they bloom by God's design? Cayce once said that what we dwell upon becomes our reality. Purpose, then, must be protected within thought and nourished through action, not speech. When we live in tune with divine will, our calling reveals itself naturally. No announcement is needed. The life itself becomes the message. So let your purpose grow in silence. Pray for clarity, not attention. Work quietly, faithfully, joyfully, and when the time is right, your path will open. Not because you told the world what you would do, but because God's light will make it known through the goodness of your deeds. The fourth thing one should never tell anyone is the secret intention of the heart before it has been purified through prayer. Edgar Cayce often said that every thought is creative, every desire, every quiet hope carries the power to shape reality. But before an intention is ready to live in the world, it must first be refined by the Spirit. The heart left to itself can be divided, part longing for divine purpose, part yearning for recognition. The soul must learn to separate light from shadow, to align will with love before intention becomes sacred. Jesus taught this truth in His Sermon on the Mount when He said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen." The room He spoke of is not only a place, it is the inner sanctuary of the heart. When you bring your intentions there, they are no longer shaped by human will, but by divine harmony. To speak them too soon is to let them be touched by the expectations and energies of others, which can distort what was meant to be pure. Cayce described this process as spiritual attunement. Intention, he said, is the blueprint of the soul's creative force. When it vibrates with love, it attracts what is good and life-giving. When it is born of pride or fear, it builds walls instead of bridges. To reveal an intention before its refinement is like showing an unfinished painting to those who cannot yet see its vision. Their reactions can alter your perception and dull your faith. Christ's example was one of holy restraint. His works flowed from a perfect unity with the Father's will, not from human desire for acknowledgement. He healed, forgave, and served without announcing his plans or seeking approval. His intention was pure because it was surrendered. So too must ours be tested in silence until it beats in rhythm with the divine heart. The fifth thing one should never tell anyone is the full measure of whom they have forgiven. For forgiveness, Cayce said, is the highest act of the soul, the moment when human love becomes divine. To forgive is to release another from judgment and oneself from bondage. But when we speak too soon of our forgiveness, we risk turning it into a statement of virtue rather than an act of grace. Forgiveness is not something we perform for others to witness. It is a secret exchange between the soul and God. It is saying, without words, I choose love instead of resentment. I choose peace instead of pride. Christ's greatest forgiveness was whispered, not proclaimed. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He offered mercy without explanation, compassion without recognition. Cayce saw in this the essence of spiritual maturity, that true forgiveness carries no need to be seen. It heals not through proclamation, but through vibration. When we silently forgive, we set in motion a wave of energy that heals both souls involved. To speak of it too often can reawaken the memory of injury, anchoring us again to the pain we had released. To forgive is to let God rewrite the story. It is the surrender of justice into the hands of divine mercy. In silence, forgiveness becomes real. In words, it can too easily become performance. Thus, Cayce urged all who sought peace to live forgiveness rather than declare it. Let it be known, not by what you say, but by the gentleness in your presence, the calm in your eyes, the compassion in your actions. When intention and forgiveness dwell together in silence, they form a bridge between heaven and earth. For the soul that purifies its motives and releases its judgments becomes a vessel of pure light. What flows through such a soul is not ambition, not pride, not the need to be right, but love. And love is the only force in the universe that requires no explanation. The sixth sacred thing one should never tell anyone is the conversation of the soul with God. There is a depth of communion that no word can carry, a silence where heaven and earth meet. Edgar Cayce often spoke of prayer as the tuning of the soul to the infinite. It is not a request, but a relationship, a vibration between the created and the creator. In that stillness, the soul remembers where it came from. When God speaks, it is rarely with sound. It comes as a peace that passes understanding, a whisper in the spirit that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Such moments are too holy to be shared lightly. To explain them is to reduce them. To parade them is to profane them. These divine intimacies are not proofs of holiness, but invitations to humility. Cayce knew that the voice of God is most often heard by those who listen without pride. The danger of sharing these encounters too freely lies not only in misunderstanding but in vanity. For the ego, ever subtle, seeks to claim what belongs only to grace. To keep one's communion private is to acknowledge that the conversation does not belong to the world. It belongs to eternity. Christ himself gave us this example. Though he walked among thousands, he prayed in solitude. At dawn, he would leave the crowds to commune with the Father in secret. And when his disciples asked how they should pray, he told them to enter their inner chamber, close the door, and pray unseen. For God is not moved by the noise of words, but by the sincerity of the heart. Cayce's readings echoed this divine principle. The most powerful prayer is silent, and the most sacred revelation is between you and God alone. When the soul prays in truth, it becomes light. When it seeks to boast of its holiness, it becomes shadow. Thus the soul must protect its communion as one would protect a flame from the wind. The more quietly it burns, the brighter it becomes. The seventh and final thing one should never tell anyone is the full nature of their dreams, those spiritual messages that come through the veil of night. Cayce called dreams the language of the soul, a bridge between the conscious mind and the eternal self. In them, God speaks through symbol and emotion, revealing guidance, healing, and memory. Yet he warned that dreams are not meant for public display. They are deeply personal communications between the soul and the divine. When we share a dream before its meaning has ripened, we may distort its message. Others may interpret it through the lens of fear, doubt, or worldly logic, pulling the vision away from its higher truth. Cayce advised those who dreamed vividly to record them, pray over them, and let the Spirit reveal their meaning in time. Dreams are seeds of destiny. They unfold as we live in harmony with their essence. Christ's own destiny was known to him in divine revelation, yet he did not speak of it before its hour. Every prophecy, every symbol, every word from the Father found fulfillment only when time and purpose met. So it is with our dreams. They are promises in motion, waiting for our obedience to make them real. To guard them in silence is to honor their sacred origin. Cayce believed that dreams hold fragments of eternity, memories from other lifetimes, messages of the higher self, or echoes of God's teaching. But he also taught that these truths must be approached with reverence. They are not trophies of mysticism. They are tools for transformation. When we treat them as sacred, they guide us. When we expose them carelessly, they lose their power. Silence, again, becomes the guardian of truth. For what is holy cannot be forced. It must be received, lived, and expressed through the gentle rhythm of a life attuned to love. In this way, our dreams, our prayers, and our deepest experiences become one continuous dialogue with the divine, unspoken but eternally heard. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when silence itself becomes prayer, when words fall away and what remains is presence, the still knowing that God is near. Edgar Cayce called this the quiet realization of oneness. It is not something we can explain, but something we become. For when the soul surrenders its need to speak, to prove, or to be understood, it enters the harmony of heaven. In that harmony, everything the soul has guarded, the secret encounters with God, the silent battles of the heart, the unseen purpose, the purified intention, the quiet forgiveness, the hidden prayer, the unspoken dream, all merge into one vibration, love. And love, as Christ showed us, is the language of eternity. It needs no explanation, it simply is. Cayce often said that God is love, and those who dwell in love dwell in God. But love, in its highest form, is not emotion. It is vibration, the living essence of the Creator moving through us. To live in that vibration is to become transparent, allowing divine light to pass through without distortion. The soul that learns to hold silence learns to hold this light. It no longer seeks to be known, only to be true. Christ's life was the perfect mirror of this truth. He spoke when the Father guided him, remained silent when words could not serve, and loved without condition. Even in silence before Pilate, even on the cross, his being radiated forgiveness and peace. That is the power of divine restraint, to speak only through presence, to let the Spirit, not the ego, bear witness. Cayce taught that the measure of spiritual maturity is not how much one knows, but how one lives what is known. The wise soul becomes gentle, the enlightened become humble. For the closer we draw to God, the less we need to explain. Understanding replaces argument, compassion replaces judgment, and silence becomes the sanctuary where love reigns. The world may never understand such quiet strength. It celebrates noise, achievement, visibility. But the soul that walks with God moves differently, not in haste but in harmony, not in self-promotion but in service. Its peace becomes its message, its joy becomes its testimony, its silence becomes its song. There is power in this simplicity, to live truth rather than speak it, to forgive rather than announce it, to love without condition, and to trust the unseen workings of grace. In one of his readings, Cayce said, "Let your life be a prayer, and your prayer be your life." This is the essence of all he taught, that spirituality is not something we talk about, but something we embody. And when we embody it, everything changes. The walls of separation fall. The soul remembers its eternal home. Christ's love becomes not a doctrine, but a living current within us, guiding each step, transforming every shadow into light. What was once hidden is revealed, not by our words, but by the quiet radiance of a life attuned to God. So let your silence speak. Let your actions preach the gospel your words cannot carry. Protect what is sacred, but let its light shine through your kindness, your patience, your peace. For those who live in truth never need to declare it, they become it. And in their presence, others remember the God within themselves. This is the purpose of silence, not secrecy but revelation, not withdrawal but illumination. In stillness, the soul finds its source. In love, it finds its destiny. When the soul learns to live in quiet reverence, every breath becomes a prayer and every moment a conversation with God. In that sacred stillness, you begin to understand what Cayce meant when he said that the purpose of life is to know your relationship with the Creator and to manifest it day by day. It is not through grand declarations, but through small acts of love that heaven reveals itself on earth. The 7 things you must never tell anyone are not laws of silence meant to bind you. They are keys to freedom. They teach you how to hold sacred what is divine, how to protect what is pure, how to honor what is still unfolding within you. Each one invites you into a deeper communion with the Spirit, away from noise, away from comparison, away from the illusion that holiness must be seen to be real. In your quiet communion, you begin to see that all life is prayer. The sunrise over still water, the hand that forgives, the tear that falls unseen, all are part of the same rhythm of grace. Cayce reminded us that our souls are eternal travelers, gathering light through every experience, every kindness, every moment of surrender. When you stop speaking long enough to listen, you can hear the echo of eternity within your own heartbeat. Christ did not seek recognition. He sought reunion between God and humanity, between heaven and earth, between love and those who had forgotten it. His every word, his every silence was a bridge. When he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he revealed the ultimate truth. The divine is not found in distant stars or sacred buildings, but in the quiet depths of your own being. Cayce's life was a testament to this same truth. He never sought fame, yet his words reached millions. He never demanded belief, only encouraged faith. Through his readings, he reminded each soul that the Christ within is the hope of glory, that God does not live outside us, but through us, as light through glass. And that light grows brightest when the glass is clear, when ego dissolves into love. In the end, everything that should not be spoken is not forbidden. It is simply too beautiful for words. It must be lived. For how can one explain the taste of peace, the sound of forgiveness, the feeling of being held by unseen hands? Such truths can only be known through being. So, walk gently. Let your heart be your altar, your silence your prayer, your kindness your offering. Protect what is sacred not by hiding it, but by living it so purely that the world cannot help but feel its presence. Let your life whisper what your tongue cannot say, that God is real, that love redeems, that every soul is a spark of the eternal flame. And when you reach the quiet at the end of the day, when all words have fallen away, listen. Beneath the thoughts, beneath the breath, you will hear it, the same voice that spoke to prophets, to healers, to saints. You are my beloved. In you, I am well pleased. That is the truth Edgar Cayce lived and Christ embodied. It is the truth that never needs to be spoken, only remembered. And when you remember it, you will no longer ask what must be shared or what must be kept. For you will understand that all that matters is love, and love, when real, speaks for itself. So keep your sacred things not in fear, but in faith. Keep your silence not in hiding, but in holiness. Let the world see through your gentleness what God has written in your soul. And one day, when words are no longer needed, you will find yourself standing in perfect stillness, where all mysteries are known and all hearts are one in Christ. Nothing in your life is by accident. Every moment, every tear, every prayer you thought went unanswered, it's all part of something greater than you can see right now. Edgar Cayce said that every soul enters this world with a divine purpose, written by God himself before time began. The people you meet, the heartbreaks you endure, the dreams that seem delayed, they're not coincidences. They are instructions from heaven, shaping you for a destiny that's far more extraordinary than anything you've imagined. You are being prepared, tested, molded, Every experience, whether joyful or painful, is part of the divine curriculum your soul agreed to before it came here. Cayce often described life as a sacred classroom where every challenge is a lesson in love. The soul, he said, evolves through experience. It learns compassion through loss, patience through waiting, and faith through uncertainty. That's why your hardest seasons are never wasted. They are the fires that refine the spirit, the soil that prepares your purpose to bloom. Jesus taught that the kingdom of God is within you, and Cayce explained that as the eternal spark of the Creator living in every soul. The Spirit of God in you cannot be destroyed. It only waits for you to remember who you really are. Maybe you've wondered why certain doors closed when you were sure they were meant to open. Maybe you've cried out to God asking why He allowed the pain, the loneliness, the disappointment. But Cayce said the soul learns best not in comfort, but in experience. Sometimes the delay is protection. Sometimes the loss is redirection. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. God is aligning your story with His divine timing, and what looks like rejection is often preparation for resurrection. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and forgotten in prison, everything in his life seemed like chaos, yet each moment was part of the design. If Joseph hadn't been thrown into the pit, he would have never reached the palace. Cayce said that Joseph's journey mirrors how the Creator shapes every soul through contrast, through shadow and light, through pain and faith. When Joseph forgave his brothers, he stepped fully into his purpose. That's how God works. When you let go of bitterness, when you trust instead of question, when you love despite the wound, you begin to walk in the rhythm of divine order. If this message already touches something deep in you, pause for a second. Like this video, share it, and write in the comments how you've seen God working in ways you didn't understand before. Your story might be the sign someone else is praying for tonight. Edgar Cayce often said that the soul chooses its circumstances. That means before you were even born, your spirit agreed to face the exact lessons you're living right now, not as punishment, but as preparation. The family you came from, the trials you face, the people who challenge your patience, they're all mirrors, showing you what your soul still needs to learn to return closer to God. Every heartbreak, every delay, every disappointment carries hidden mercy. Cayce called it the law of cause and effect, the spiritual principle that everything you sow, you eventually reap, not to punish, but to balance. That's why nothing in your life is wasted. Every moment is either healing something old or planting something new. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Cayce explained that mourning refines the soul. It softens pride and opens the heart to compassion. Have you noticed how pain changes your prayer? How suffering makes you listen differently? That's because God uses pain not to destroy, but to awaken. When life strips away what's temporary, you begin to notice what's eternal. When your plans fall apart, God is revealing that His plan is still unfolding. Cayce taught that the spirit within never gives up. It waits patiently for you to remember that you are more than flesh and memory. You are a fragment of the divine mind placed here to learn how to love as Christ loved. You are not just surviving a season, you are being shaped by it. Cayce said that faith is not something you hold, it's something that holds you when everything else falls away. Sometimes God isolates you because elevation requires separation. The silence that scares you is the workshop of the soul, where God whispers truths too sacred to be spoken in noise. Remember Elijah in the Bible. God wasn't in the wind or the fire or the earthquake, but in the still small voice. Cayce said that same stillness is where the soul meets its Creator. So when life feels unbearable, close your eyes and breathe. You are not forgotten. You are being fortified. Many people pray for growth but resist the very experiences that cause it. Cayce said that the soul often cries out for light, yet complains when God sends the fire that purifies. Growth requires friction. Purpose demands pressure. You can't learn forgiveness without betrayal, nor strength without struggle. The same hammer that shatters glass forges steel. The fire that burns away illusions also reveals truth. The pain you carry now might be the exact path to the peace you've been praying for. Don't rush the process. God doesn't waste a single tear. If this message is awakening something in your spirit, let me know in the comments below. Type, "I am learning to trust" as a declaration that you're choosing faith over fear. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for more reflections that bring you closer to God and your divine purpose. Cayce said that every soul carries within it a spark of the Christ consciousness, a fragment of divine awareness that longs to reunite with its source. That means your life is not a random sequence of ups and downs. It's a sacred unfolding designed to awaken that light within you. Every time you forgive when it hurts, you expand that light. Every time you pray when hope feels distant, you draw heaven a little closer to earth. The ordinary moments you overlook are often the places where God hides his greatest miracles. The people who test your patience might be angels in disguise, sent to help you practice love until it becomes your nature. The journey of faith isn't about comfort, it's about transformation. Cayce warned that when we measure life only by what we can see, we miss the eternal lessons behind what we feel. The soul doesn't grow through success, it grows through surrender. Jesus showed us this on the cross, the ultimate act of love disguised as defeat. Cayce said that the crucifixion symbolizes the daily process of dying to self so the Spirit can live through us. When you let go of control, you allow divine order to work in your favor. What you think is falling apart might actually be falling into place. There's a story Cayce once told about a man who lost everything: his job, his home, his health. In prayer, the man asked, "Why has God abandoned me?" But through meditation he realized God hadn't left. He had led him to rediscover what truly mattered: peace, purpose, and faith. Cayce said that our greatest awakenings often happen when everything external is stripped away. Only then can we hear the inner voice of the Spirit that says, "Be still and know that I am God." It's in those quiet, broken moments that the eternal self rises. So if you're walking through a dark season, remember this: the night is not the end, it's preparation for the dawn. Cayce explained that before every great leap in spiritual awareness, the soul must pass through a test of faith. The more intense the storm, the greater the light that follows. That's why Jesus said, "Fear not, for I am with you always." He knew the Spirit of God doesn't remove challenges, it redeems them. Even the things that broke you were working for your resurrection. You are not being buried, you are being planted. And when you finally bloom, you'll understand why God took his time. You'll see that every unanswered prayer was an invitation to deeper trust. Every heartbreak was pruning for a greater harvest. And every silence was sacred training for the extraordinary calling within you. So hold on a little longer. You are being prepared for something beyond imagination. If you believe this message is speaking directly to your soul, like this video and share it with someone who needs faith today. Because maybe you're the messenger God is using to remind someone else that they too are being prepared for something extraordinary. Cayce often described the soul's evolution as a spiral, not a straight line. You revisit lessons, but each time you do, you come back wiser, more aware, closer to God. That's why old wounds sometimes resurface. They're not signs of failure, but invitations to heal at a deeper level. When you face the same test again, it's not because you've gone backward, it's because you're strong enough now to choose differently. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Cayce explained that truth is not learned through books, but through living. Experience is the divine teacher, and every trial is an opportunity to embody what you already know in spirit. Look at your life right now, the people who challenge your peace, the situations that stretch your patience. These are not accidents. They are mirrors reflecting where love still needs to grow. Cayce said that all relationships, even the painful ones, are sacred contracts written long before birth, designed for mutual awakening. That means the one who betrayed you may have been your greatest teacher in disguise. The one who left you might have been sent to push you toward the God who never leaves. When you begin to see every person and every moment as part of your soul's agreement with heaven, the anger fades and gratitude begins. Faith, Cayce said, is not belief without doubt. It's choosing to walk through the doubt anyway. When Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water, he sank not because of the waves, but because he looked away from Christ. Life will always have storms, but the spirit within you cannot drown. Each time you fall, you rise a little stronger. Each time you surrender, you trust a little deeper. That's how you become unshakable, not by avoiding pain, but by walking through it with purpose. Cayce believed that prayer and action must work together. He said, "Make your prayers practical." In other words, don't just ask God to change your life. Become the vessel through which that change happens. Pray for guidance, then move with faith. Forgive, serve, love. Each act of kindness sets divine law in motion. When you live this way, heaven begins to move through your daily life. The small becomes sacred. The ordinary turns holy. You realize you were never waiting for a miracle. You were becoming one. And that's the true preparation Cayce spoke about. Transformation from the inside out. God isn't preparing you to be comfortable. He's preparing you to be capable. He's training your soul to hold more light, more peace, more grace than you ever thought possible. The things that once broke you will one day bow before the strength you built through faith. Every scar will tell the story of a God who never stopped believing in you, even when you stopped believing in yourself. Maybe you've felt lately that you've been walking through darkness too long, waiting for a sign that God still remembers your name. But Cayce said that the soul's darkest hour often comes right before its awakening. The silence isn't punishment, it's calibration. The divine is rearranging the unseen, aligning every detail for your next chapter. Think of a seed buried underground. It feels pressure, weight, and darkness before it ever feels the sun. But within that silence, something sacred is happening. It's preparing to break open. And that's you right now. You're not buried, you're planted. Cayce explained that in moments of deep struggle, the soul is closest to its source. He said that the spirit within you never loses connection with God. It only waits for the conscious mind to remember. That means even when your faith shakes, even when you feel lost, the divine light inside you remains steady. God is not testing you to see if you'll fail. He's revealing how strong you've already become. Every time you choose forgiveness over resentment, patience over fear, love over revenge, you evolve. You climb another rung of the spiritual ladder, returning to the likeness of Christ. The extraordinary that's coming isn't fame, wealth, or success. It's awakening. It's peace in the middle of storms. It's the quiet strength that knows, I've walked through fire and came out refined. Cayce said that heaven and earth meet in the heart that forgives. That's where miracles begin, not in the noise of achievement, but in the stillness of surrender. When you live from that space, even your smallest actions ripple through eternity. You speak softer, love deeper, and suddenly life doesn't feel random anymore. Every moment reveals God's fingerprints. Every delay becomes divine design. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field." Cayce explained that the field is life itself, and the treasure is wisdom buried within experience. The challenges you face are not obstacles. They are clues pointing you toward that treasure. You are not being prepared for something external. You are being prepared to awaken what was within you all along. God doesn't send pain to break you. He allows it to reveal what's unbreakable. That's how purpose is born. Look at your life once more. Every detour, every heartbreak, every prayer that ended differently than you hoped, it was all preparation. The relationship that ended taught you self-worth. The failure that embarrassed you built your resilience. The delay that frustrated you protected your timing. The illness that slowed you down forced you to listen. Every single event has been an act of divine choreography, leading you to this very moment, to remember that nothing in your life has ever been an accident. So, take this moment right now. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Feel your heartbeat. It's proof that the Creator still believes your story isn't finished. Whisper these words. Nothing in my life is by accident. I am being prepared for something extraordinary. Let that truth sink into your soul. This is your turning point, your awakening, your invitation to trust. If this message resonated with you, share it. Let it reach someone else who's struggling to make sense of their pain. Leave a comment below that says, "I trust God's plan." Let those words echo through the algorithm as a collective prayer. Like this video, subscribe for more reflections that remind you of your divine purpose. And remember, God never wastes pain. He transforms it into wisdom, turns wounds into testimonies, and chaos into creation. You were never forgotten, you were being prepared. One day when you look back, you'll see how every closed door led you to the right one, how every heartbreak opened your heart, and how every delay brought you closer to your destiny. You'll understand that grace was present all along, even when you couldn't see it. And in that moment of understanding, you'll realize it was all preparation for something extraordinary. There are moments in life when something invisible steps in, when disaster should have struck, but somehow didn't, when a voice within whispers, "Wait," and that small hesitation changes everything. Edgar Cayce called this the movement of the higher forces, the divine intelligence guiding those who are in harmony with God's plan. He taught that protection is not luck, it's the result of a spiritual alignment so precise that even unseen energies respond. If you've ever felt an unexplainable calm in the middle of chaos, or a sudden sense of safety when you should have been afraid, you may already be under this protection. But how do you know for sure? How can you recognize the fingerprints of a higher power in your life? In this video, you'll discover the 9 real signs revealed through Cayce's readings that prove when the divine has placed its hand over you. Stay until the end. One of these signs might explain why you were spared more than once. Before we begin, comment below. Have you ever felt protected by something you can't explain? There comes a moment in every soul's journey when logic fails and only faith remains. We have all faced nights so silent that even our own thoughts echo like thunder inside us. It is in those hours that the spirit either collapses or awakens. Edgar Cayce used to say that the presence of God is not found in miracles alone, but in the stillness of the heart that refuses to fear. The higher power, as he described, is not distant. It vibrates within the same energy that keeps the stars burning. It is around you, moving through the invisible fabric of life, protecting, guiding, and sometimes testing your courage. When Cayce entered his trance, he spoke about the subtle laws that connect every soul to its source. He revealed that the universe responds to thought, that prayer changes vibration, and that divine protection is not random. It is drawn by the frequency of faith. When you live with your heart aligned to what he called the creative forces, you don't need to chase safety. Safety finds you. Many call it intuition, others luck. But Cayce insisted, it is grace. Grace that shields the sincere, that whispers warnings, and that sometimes leads us through storms only to prove we were never alone. Most people think protection from a higher power means the absence of pain. Cayce disagreed. He said divine protection often allows pain not to harm, but to purify. The soul grows through contrast. The light of heaven shines brighter when it's born from human darkness. That's why those who walk with God are not spared from trials. They are guided through them. Each difficulty becomes a message, a mirror, revealing what part of us still resists trust. To be protected does not mean to be untouched. It means to be upheld by something that never lets you fall completely. Think of the moments you almost lost everything, yet somehow didn't. The times you cried without hope, only to wake up with new strength the next morning. The people who appeared out of nowhere to offer help at the exact moment you needed it. Those are not coincidences. Cayce taught that nothing in a universe governed by spirit happens by chance. Every event, every meeting, every delay carries the fingerprints of divine intelligence. Even silence is guidance when the heart is listening. It's easy to believe in God when life is smooth. But the true measure of faith is found in the valley, not on the mountaintop. Cayce warned that when the soul begins to awaken, darkness often intensifies, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because light attracts resistance. The moment you start aligning with truth, the forces of fear and doubt rise up, not to destroy you, but to reveal where you are still fragile. And in that vulnerability, God's protection becomes most active. Cayce's readings often reminded people that they are never abandoned, even when prayers seem unanswered. He said the delay of heaven is never denial, it's design. Divine timing is the language of eternity. What you call waiting, God calls shaping. And every unanswered prayer might be protection in disguise, sparing you from paths that would have dimmed your light. The challenge is that we rarely see the full picture while living inside the moment. Only when we look back do we realize the invisible hand that redirected our steps. If you've ever felt that unseen presence guiding you, stay with this video until the end, because soon we'll uncover the real signs that Cayce described, subtle yet unmistakable evidence that you are shielded by a higher power. But before we continue, take a moment to reflect. Do you still doubt that the divine is near? Comment below what made you believe, or stop believing, in divine protection. And if you feel this message speaks to you, like this video and subscribe to help more people find light in their own storms. Cayce said that the moment a person begins to live with purpose and love, unseen forces rearrange themselves to make the impossible possible. He described these forces as vibrations of divine energy that align with the mind that prays, the heart that forgives, and the soul that serves. To him, faith was not a belief. It was a frequency. Every thought, every emotion, every act of compassion sends out a current into the spiritual field that surrounds you, drawing back experiences that match your inner state. When that state is love and truth, the universe itself becomes your protector. That is why Cayce often reminded his followers that the safest person on earth is the one in harmony with God's laws, because even chaos will bend to serve their growth. He explained that divine protection isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it appears in the quiet redirection of your path. You lose a job only to find your calling. A relationship ends so that your spirit can breathe again. You miss a flight, and later hear of the tragedy that could have taken your life. To the unawakened mind, these seem like coincidences, but Cayce warned that calling them coincidence is blindness to divine order. Nothing in the universe, he said, happens without cause. The closer a soul moves toward light, the more that light becomes its shield. One of the most misunderstood truths he shared is that protection is not given to a few chosen ones. It is available to all who choose to live in alignment with divine purpose. It is not about religion, rituals, or belonging to a creed. It's about the energy you carry. Cayce said that when the Spirit of Christ dwells within you, fear loses authority. Evil cannot cling to a heart that vibrates in forgiveness. Protection begins the moment love becomes your default response. That is when angels, real beings of light, according to Cayce, are drawn to you as naturally as a flame attracts warmth. Many people asked Cayce why some who prayed still suffered. His answer was simple and piercing. Protection does not mean exemption from life, it means companionship through it. The higher forces do not erase pain, they transform it into power. Every tear becomes a seed of understanding, every heartbreak a call to surrender. The more you resist, the heavier life feels. But when you finally let go and trust that there is a wisdom behind the unseen, that's when divine protection begins to reveal itself. The soul that accepts its journey is the one the universe conspires to defend. So when you feel lost or vulnerable, remember this. You are never truly alone. The same creative force that formed the stars is breathing through you at this moment. Cayce often said that the Spirit of Christ is a living vibration inside every human heart, waiting to be awakened. And once awakened, it cannot be harmed. That's why people who have touched that light radiate peace even in crisis. They've realized that what's divine within them is untouchable. That realization is itself the highest form of protection. If you're feeling this message resonate somewhere deep inside, pause for a second and hit the like button. It helps the message reach more souls who may be searching for hope right now. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something that felt like a warning, a coincidence, or a miracle? What if those were not random moments, but signs that the higher power was already at work in your life? Edgar Cayce once said, "Every soul is surrounded by the result of its own thinking." To him, that invisible atmosphere, what he called the aura, was not only a reflection of who we are, but also a barrier of spiritual energy that responds to divine law. The more we live in truth and kindness, the brighter that field becomes, and the more resistant we grow to lower vibrations like fear, envy, or despair. This brings us to the first sign that you are protected by a higher power, a deep and unexplainable peace. Cayce described it as the stillness of the Christ within. You can feel it even when everything around you seems to collapse. It's not denial and it's not naivety. It's a knowing that whatever happens, your soul is being guided by something infallible. When you reach that point, You stop begging for safety and start walking with faith. The second sign, according to Cayce, is synchronicity, the mysterious alignment of events that seem random but form patterns too precise to be accidental. He said that when the soul lives in harmony with divine will, time itself becomes a servant. You meet the right person at the right moment, hear the right message, or are delayed just enough to be spared from harm. These moments are not coincidences, they are whispers from the spiritual realm. Cayce explained that thoughts travel faster than light, and that higher energies can rearrange circumstances to protect those aligned with truth. So when life redirects you, pause before complaining. What seems like an obstacle may be your shield. The third sign is intuitive warning. Cayce taught that intuition is the soul's voice speaking through the subconscious mind. It is divine communication, often ignored because it feels too subtle. Have you ever felt a sudden sense of don't go, or an inner pull to wait, to take a different road, to call someone? Cayce said those impulses are not random. They are the higher forces acting through your inner senses. The more pure your intent, the clearer this voice becomes. Protection starts long before danger appears. It begins with sensitivity to the divine whisper. Those who ignore it often call misfortune bad luck, but those who obey it later realize that grace was already working in silence. And then there is the fourth sign, the mysterious strength that appears in moments of crisis. Cayce described it as a peace that passes understanding, a strength that is not your own. Many people who were healed or saved in ways doctors couldn't explain later described this exact feeling, the presence of something holy, lifting them above fear. Cayce explained that such energy is drawn by prayer and the attitude of surrender. When you release control and trust that the divine knows better, you open the gates for that higher current to flow. It fills you with courage that has no logical source. It is not borrowed, it is awakened. He insisted that divine protection doesn't remove the storm. It calms the storm within you so that the outside can no longer dominate. Every trial, no matter how dark, is a disguised teacher, and those who remain anchored in faith will always be guided to safety, even when it looks like defeat. This is the paradox of spiritual protection. It's not about avoiding pain, but about transforming it into revelation. When you finally understand that nothing happens outside of divine order, fear loses its purpose. When you recognize even one of these signs in your life, pause and give thanks. Gratitude, Cayce said, multiplies divine energy. It expands your spiritual protection field because it signals that you are aware of grace. The universe listens to awareness, and the more you acknowledge divine help, the more it appears. The fifth sign, according to Edgar Cayce, comes through your dreams. He called them the language of the soul, and said that while the body sleeps, the spirit remembers who it truly is. In that expanded awareness, messages from the higher power can reach you without the interference of doubt. Protection often arrives this way, not as clear instructions, but as symbols, emotions, or recurring images. A voice warning you, a familiar presence offering comfort, or a scene that later unfolds exactly as shown. Cayce explained that when the conscious mind rests, divine intelligence uses the dream state to guide the soul towards safety and understanding. Ignoring your dreams, he said, is like hanging up the phone on heaven's call. The sixth sign is the presence of unexpected helpers. Cayce believed that angels are not only beings of light in the higher realms, but also souls in human form, temporarily crossing your path for a purpose. Maybe it's a stranger who appears exactly when you need help, or a friend who says the right words without knowing why. Cayce said that the higher forces use willing hearts as instruments, weaving protection through the kindness of others. When you feel that someone entered your life for a reason, it's not your imagination. The divine often works through people, disguising grace as coincidence. The seventh sign is recovery beyond reason. Cayce performed thousands of healings and always insisted that true healing comes from within. The body, he said, is merely the temple of a divine consciousness, capable of regenerating itself through faith and right vibration. Many of those who followed his guidance experienced recoveries doctors couldn't explain, because they began to align thought, emotion, and prayer with the same creative force that made them. Protection, therefore, is not always the absence of illness. Sometimes it is the miracle of resilience, the invisible power that restores what life tried to take. Then comes the eighth sign, moments when the divine removes what you thought you needed most. Cayce warned that sometimes protection appears as loss. When God closes a door, it is not rejection, it's redirection. A friendship ends, a plan fails, an opportunity disappears. Yet later you see how those very endings were preparing you for something greater. The higher power doesn't punish, it purifies. It subtracts what weakens your spirit so you can move toward what strengthens it. The secret, Cayce said, is to bless even what leaves you, because in the unseen it may have saved your life. The ninth sign, the highest one, is transformation through suffering. Cayce taught that the soul evolves through contrast, and that the hardest moments of your life often reveal the clearest evidence of divine guardianship. When pain doesn't break you but makes you more compassionate, when failure awakens humility instead of bitterness, when darkness leads you to light, that is protection in its purest form. The higher power uses the tools of time to refine what is eternal in you. Suffering becomes the forge where faith is shaped into certainty. That is why, according to Cayce, no soul that sincerely seeks God ever suffers in vain. When you begin to see your life through these 9 signs, fear dissolves. You stop asking, why me, and start realizing, for me. Every delay, every detour, every heartbreak was part of your spiritual armor. The Creator's love does not fail. It only works in ways the human mind struggles to understand. To Cayce, understanding this was liberation. Once you know that the divine walks with you, you realize there was never a need to beg for protection, only to recognize it. If this message reached you, if it made you remember something sacred inside you, take a moment now to like this video and subscribe. Help this truth travel to more souls who may have forgotten that heaven never stops watching. Comment below which of these signs you've experienced in your own life, because your testimony might be the light someone else is praying for. The higher power is not a distant force. It is the breath inside your breath, the thought behind every miracle. And once you align with it, nothing truly threatens you again. Cayce's final and most powerful message was always the same. Protection begins when you remember your divine origin. He said that the human soul is not a visitor on earth, but a spark of the creative force itself, temporarily clothed in matter. When you live as though separated from that source, fear dominates. But when you remember who walks with you, fear dissolves. He urged everyone to cultivate daily communion with the divine, not through ritual but through awareness. A silent prayer before action, a moment of gratitude before rest, a willingness to forgive before resentment hardens. Those small acts, he said, generate a vibration that no darkness can penetrate. Protection is not something you beg for. It is something you become. He often referred to this state as Christ consciousness. It's not about religion, but recognition, the awareness that the same spirit that healed the blind and calmed the sea dwells within you. When that truth becomes real, life changes. You begin to see the sacred pattern behind everything. You realize that even pain has purpose, that what you thought was punishment was actually preparation. And in that understanding, you find peace, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstances. Cayce taught that Christ consciousness is not achieved through perfection, but through surrender. Surrendering the will to divine wisdom, trusting that the higher power always knows the safest road, even when it feels steep. He warned that doubt is the soul's greatest enemy, not because it offends God, but because it disconnects us from the current of protection. Doubt lowers vibration, opening doors to fear. Faith, on the other hand, elevates, reconnects, restores. It keeps you inside the spiritual current that shields your path. Cayce said that when you live in this faith, every thought becomes a prayer and every step a declaration, I am one with the Creator. That affirmation alone carries more power than any external ritual. The angels respond to vibration, not words. When your life radiates trust, heaven listens. He left behind thousands of readings reminding us that divine protection is not reserved for saints or mystics. It is the natural state of every soul that remembers its divine heritage. The challenge is consistency. You can't dip in and out of faith like a visitor. You must dwell in it. That means choosing love when fear tempts you, choosing peace when anger rises, choosing prayer when reason fails. In that moment, you are under the shadow of the Almighty, as Psalm 91 declares. Cayce frequently quoted this passage, reminding seekers that spiritual law is universal and timeless. Whoever abides in the consciousness of God abides in safety. So as you reach the end of this message, reflect. How many times were you saved without noticing? How many closed doors were acts of mercy disguised as loss? How many nights did you cry for help, unaware that angels were already working in silence? The higher power is not distant. It's the pulse behind your heartbeat, the thought behind your courage, the light that refuses to die even in despair. If you have ever felt that warmth during your darkest hour, you have already touched it. Cayce would end his sessions by saying, "Keep the faith and the faith will keep you." That remains the simplest formula for divine protection. The universe answers the vibration of your heart. Keep it tuned to love, and no shadow will ever stay for long. Keep it tuned to truth, and no deceit can reach you. Keep it tuned to Christ, and you will never again walk alone. If these words awakened something sacred within you, if you felt peace while listening, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember that they are not forgotten. Leave a comment below describing one moment in your life that felt like divine protection. It may remind another soul that miracles still happen. Remember, you are not waiting for the higher power to arrive. You are already living inside it. In one of his most striking readings during the 1930s, Edgar Cayce described something that shocked everyone in the room. The hours before sleep are the most powerful moments to reprogram not only your mind, but also the health of your entire body. Imagine this. While most people simply collapse into bed, unaware of the immense spiritual and biological processes unfolding, Cayce explained that what you think, feel, and even pray right before sleep determines how your cells repair, how your organs function, and how your soul aligns with its divine blueprint. This was not theory. It came from trance sessions where he accessed what he called the Akashic Records, the universal library of the soul. Doctors, skeptics, and desperate families witnessed results that modern science at the time could not explain. And yet, today, neuroscience and psychosomatic medicine are finally beginning to confirm what Cayce revealed nearly a century ago. But here's the detail no one expected. Cayce taught that healing does not start with medicine or external remedies. It begins with the conscious direction of the mind right before surrendering to sleep. During one session that forever changed a family's destiny, he told a mother, who had nearly lost hope for her sick child, that every night, just before drifting into unconsciousness, she should project thoughts of wholeness, visualize the child radiant with vitality, and pray with absolute faith. Within weeks, visible improvements astonished even the attending physicians. This is why Cayce became known not only as the sleeping prophet, but also as a pioneer of holistic healing that merged spirit, mind, and body in a way never seen before. What does this mean for you? It means that the minutes before you close your eyes tonight may carry more power than hours of treatment, more weight than any external influence, and more transformation than countless restless days. Cayce explained that when the body relaxes and the conscious mind releases its grip, the subconscious opens like fertile soil, ready to receive seeds of health, peace, and renewal. Those who went to bed angry, fearful, or resentful would wake up heavier, weaker, and spiritually blocked. Those who chose forgiveness, gratitude, and the vivid imagination of health would wake up recharged, often reporting relief from chronic pain or emotional burdens. And here is where the tension rises. During the Great Depression, when families across America were broken by financial ruin, Cayce's readings brought not just hope, but practical guidance. He reminded them that while the external world may be filled with scarcity and suffering, the inner world, especially before sleep, was where miracles could be programmed. A businessman from New York who had lost everything came to him desperate and ill. Cayce told him that unless he changed the way he spoke to himself before sleep, no amount of medication or financial effort would restore his health. Weeks later, after applying this nightly discipline of programming his mind with faith and images of renewal, his energy returned, and soon after, so did his ability to rebuild his career. This pattern repeated itself in Virginia Beach, in Hopkinsville, and in countless sessions that left witnesses stunned. If you are watching this right now, pause for a second and think, what are you planting in your subconscious every night? Is it fear, anger, regret, or is it peace, healing, and connection to the divine source of life? Cayce's message is clear. What you feed your mind before sleep becomes the architecture of your health, your destiny, and your soul's expression. And if this resonates with you, let me ask, have you ever tried to consciously direct your thoughts before sleeping? Share it in the comments below, because I'm reading every one of them, and I'll leave a little heart on your comment. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this message. Together, we can spread the wisdom of Edgar Cayce and remind the world of the extraordinary power that lies in the simplest moments before sleep. Now let's go deeper. Cayce didn't stop at general advice. He offered practical steps. He spoke of aligning the body with proper posture before sleep, suggesting that the spine should be straight and the body comfortable for the channels of energy to remain open. He described the necessity of prayer, not as repetition of empty words, but as a living force that shapes reality. He even explained that the emotions we carry into sleep can open or block the flow of life energy, which he often referred to as the vital forces. Families reported that by shifting their pre-sleep rituals, reading scripture, expressing gratitude, or simply visualizing health, they experienced measurable transformations. What was dismissed as faith healing by critics later began to resemble what modern psychology now calls the placebo effect, though Cayce insisted it was far more than suggestion. It was the soul commanding the body to obey divine order. Cayce also warned that neglecting this sacred moment before sleep could have severe consequences. He explained that when unresolved negativity is carried into the subconscious, it can manifest as illness, restlessness, or even chronic conditions over time. In one of his most powerful readings of 1932, he told a man who constantly went to bed filled with bitterness that unless he released those thoughts, his body would eventually reflect them through disease. This was not a curse, but a law. What the soul impresses upon the mind, the body expresses in form. To the astonishment of the physicians present, that very pattern unfolded exactly as Cayce predicted. And yet, when the man finally embraced forgiveness, gratitude, and nightly affirmations of health, his condition began to shift. This reinforced Cayce's conviction that healing is not only about what doctors prescribe, it is about the inner dialogue you carry with you into sleep every night. During the war years, when fear and loss filled American homes, Cayce continued to emphasize the same principle. Soldiers' families wrote letters to the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, asking what they could do while their loved ones were away in dangerous battles. Cayce's reply was always anchored in the same truth. Each night, as you close your eyes, project thoughts of safety, light, and divine protection. Mothers later testified that their sons returned home, describing uncanny moments when they felt surrounded by an invisible shield of strength, often at the exact times their families were praying before bed. These stories spread quietly, strengthening the idea that human consciousness, especially in the threshold between waking and sleep, carries an influence beyond what most of us dare to imagine. Modern science now echoes this truth. Neuroscientists studying neuroplasticity confirm that the brain replays and consolidates patterns of thought and emotion during sleep, hardwiring them into behavior and even affecting the body's immune system. What Cayce revealed under trance nearly a century ago is now visible under brain scans. When he said, "Mind is the builder," he meant it literally. Your health, your vitality, and even your future are constructed by the images, beliefs, and emotions you impress upon your subconscious. And sleep is the most fertile moment of all, because the conscious mind finally stops resisting, allowing seeds of transformation to sink deep. Consider this. Cayce described the subconscious as the bridge between the physical body and the higher self. This bridge becomes fully open during the moments of transition into sleep. If anger, doubt, and fear cross that bridge, they pollute the soul's creative energy, shaping the body in destructive ways. But if faith, peace, and gratitude are the travelers, they bring divine order into every cell. One family in Ohio recounted how, after years of illness, they followed Cayce's guidance. Each night before bed, they spoke affirmations of life, visualized their child walking and laughing, and prayed together. The transformation that followed could not be denied. The child's strength returned, and the family's faith deepened permanently. These were not isolated cases. This pattern repeated across countless readings, proving a principle that is as practical as it is mystical. The question is, are we willing to apply it? Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, you hold a choice that Cayce insisted was greater than any external cure. You can either carry with you the residue of the day, complaints, worries, disappointments, or you can deliberately choose to release them, forgive them, and replace them with visions of vitality and harmony. This practice is not about pretending life is perfect. It is about aligning with the higher law of spirit over matter. Cayce's readings emphasized that even during national crises like the Great Depression, individuals who practiced this nightly discipline not only preserved their health but also inspired others through their resilience. And here's the striking part. This teaching is not confined to spirituality alone. It has practical applications that touch psychology, medicine, and even family relationships. When someone programs their mind before sleep with forgiveness, the nervous system calms, reducing stress hormones. When they visualize health, immune responses improve. When they offer gratitude, the heart rate slows, aligning the body with coherence. Cayce could not use the language of modern science, but his message remains timeless. The last 5 minutes before you sleep may determine not only how you wake up tomorrow, but how you live the rest of your life. One of the most profound aspects of Cayce's guidance on sleep was the idea that the body itself listens to the language of the mind. He described the human system as a living instrument, constantly tuned by the vibrations of thought and emotion. Just as a musician must carefully tune an instrument before a performance, we must carefully tune our minds before entering the stage of sleep. If we allow discord, the body resonates with illness. If we allow harmony, the body resonates with health. In Virginia Beach, people began to adopt nightly routines inspired by Cayce's readings. Families would gather, pray, read passages of scripture, and then speak affirmations of wellness and peace before bedtime. Witnesses reported remarkable improvements, not only in physical conditions, but also in relationships, tempers, and emotional stability. The home became calmer, sleep became deeper, dreams became more meaningful, and all of this was anchored in a simple but powerful discipline, programming the mind before sleep. Cayce went further, explaining that dreams themselves were not random illusions, but the subconscious processing of these nightly seeds. He often told clients that if they wanted to understand their health, they should carefully observe their dreams. Many people later confirmed that when they filled their minds with images of light, healing, and divine presence before bed, their dreams reflected harmony and guidance. Conversely, when they went to sleep troubled and resentful, their dreams were chaotic, confusing, even disturbing. This connection between pre-sleep thoughts and dream content reinforced the idea that the mind is actively shaping health while the body rests. For Cayce, sleep was not an escape from reality. It was the workshop where reality itself was rebuilt. During the post-war years, as America tried to rebuild both its economy and its spirit, many sought Cayce's advice not just for physical ailments, but for emotional wounds. Veterans struggling with trauma were encouraged to release their fears before sleep and replace them with affirmations of peace. Families grieving losses were told to pray for comfort and envision reunion with loved ones in spirit. These practices often led to extraordinary reports: veterans finding relief from nightmares, widows receiving comfort through meaningful dreams, children waking up without the same fear they had carried for months. For Cayce, these were not coincidences, but demonstrations of a spiritual law as old as creation itself. What the soul impresses before sleep, the body and mind express upon waking. Science today calls this pre-sleep suggestion, and countless studies confirm its impact. Athletes visualize successful performance before bed and wake with improved coordination. Students affirm confidence before exams and show better results. Patients who listen to guided relaxation before sleep experience lower pain levels and faster healing. Every one of these findings echoes Cayce's words: mind is the builder. And while medical journals describe neural pathways and hormonal changes, Cayce framed it more simply. What you believe and imagine before you surrender to sleep becomes your reality. The subconscious is like fertile soil. The seed you plant at night will sprout in the morning. So what can you do tonight to align with this timeless truth? Begin with a simple ritual. Before lying down, pause. Breathe deeply. Release the frustrations of the day. Forgive those who hurt you, even if only silently in your heart. Speak words of gratitude, no matter how small. Thankful for a roof, for breath, for the chance to begin again tomorrow. Then visualize yourself healthy, strong, filled with divine light. See your loved ones surrounded by protection and peace. Pray not as repetition, but as connection, as if your words were painting images in the subconscious that angels themselves could carry into reality. This was Cayce's wisdom, and it is as available to you now as it was to families in the 1930s who clung to his words during their darkest nights. And remember, this is not about perfection. Cayce never said you had to eliminate all fear or doubt instantly. He taught that even the smallest act of programming your mind before sleep could redirect the current of your life. One phrase spoken with sincerity, one visualization held with faith, one prayer whispered in trust. These are enough to begin the transformation. Over time, as you repeat this nightly, your subconscious accepts it as truth, and your body follows suit. Health, peace, and resilience become the natural expression of the soul that has chosen harmony over chaos. And the more people practice this, the more it ripples outward, strengthening families, communities, and entire generations. Cayce emphasized that this practice was not bound by wealth, status, or education. Whether a farmer in Kentucky, a businessman in New York, or a mother in Ohio, every person had the same ability to direct their subconscious before sleep. In fact, during the Great Depression, when many had no access to expensive doctors or treatments, his words carried even greater weight. You already hold within your mind the instruments of healing. He reminded people that God had placed divine intelligence in every soul, and that through sleep, this intelligence could repair and restore the body when given the right command. This is why so many of his clients, despite external poverty, found inner strength and physical recovery that baffled even their local physicians. In Hopkinsville, his hometown, stories circulated of families who followed his advice with remarkable consistency. They would recite affirmations aloud together before bedtime, such as, "God's life flows through every part of this body," or "Tomorrow I wake renewed and whole." Their children slept more peacefully, and illnesses that had lingered began to fade. Cayce was clear that words alone were not magic. They had to be infused with genuine belief and emotional conviction. The subconscious did not respond to empty repetition. It responded to the vibration of faith. For those who truly felt what they affirmed, results often came swiftly and unexpectedly. But perhaps the most mysterious part of Cayce's teaching was his description of the soul's activity during sleep. He explained that the soul leaves the confines of the physical body and reconnects with universal consciousness. In this state, it can access wisdom, healing, and spiritual strength far beyond the waking mind. If the soul departs in bitterness, it returns with heaviness. If it departs in gratitude, it returns with radiance. This vision of sleep as a nightly return to the source transformed the way many people approached bedtime. No longer was it just the closing of a day. It was a sacred journey of renewal, a rehearsal of eternity, a chance to realign with divine order. Today, as millions struggle with stress, anxiety, and illness, Cayce's insights are more relevant than ever. Sleep problems plague society, with countless people reaching for pills and distractions, unaware of the power they hold in their own minds. But Cayce would tell us that no matter how chaotic the world may seem, the quiet moment before sleep is still ours to command. It is the doorway to perfect health, perfect peace, and the unfolding of a divine plan written within every soul. So tonight, before you close your eyes, remember this. Your final thoughts are not random. They are blueprints. They instruct your body how to heal, your mind how to grow, and your spirit how to rise. This is the timeless wisdom of Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, still calling us to reclaim the hidden power of the subconscious. What you do with this truth will determine not only how you wake tomorrow, but how you live the rest of your days. When Cayce was asked why some people's prayers seemed unanswered, his response was direct. Many carried into sleep words of faith, but emotions of fear. The subconscious, he explained, does not obey surface words. It obeys the deeper current of feeling. If someone says, "I am healthy," but inside trembles with doubt, the body receives the vibration of fear, not health. That is why Cayce urged his clients to cultivate sincerity before bed. Even a simple phrase like, "God is with me," became powerful when spoken with deep conviction. He reminded them that truth is not measured by eloquence, but by the alignment of mind, heart, and soul in those final moments of the day. Families who practiced this distinction often returned to report astonishing results. Pain diminishing, insomnia fading, and a renewed sense of peace that carried them through crises. He also linked this nightly practice to forgiveness. During several readings, Cayce said that unresolved anger, if carried into sleep, poisoned the body over time. He called forgiveness a medicine more powerful than any pill. In one life-changing session, he told a woman that her constant resentment was manifesting as chronic stomach pain. Unless she released those emotions before sleep, no treatment would cure her. The woman took his words seriously, and each night began forgiving in prayer, even those who had hurt her deeply. Over weeks, her condition improved until the pain was nearly gone. This was a living testimony that forgiveness, programmed into the subconscious at night, could unlock physical healing. Cayce also described the role of visualization. Long before psychologists popularized the concept, he instructed patients to see themselves well, to imagine light filling their bodies, to hold an inner picture of health so vivid that the subconscious accepted it as real. One man with severe arthritis was told to visualize himself walking freely each night before sleep. Though progress was slow, he eventually regained mobility far beyond the doctor's expectations. This was not superstition, Cayce emphasized, but the natural law of mind-shaping matter. The subconscious is creative, and when given a clear blueprint, it instructs the body to rebuild according to that image. Even today, research confirms that imagery and visualization practiced before sleep influence the body's recovery. Athletes rehearse movements in the mind and show measurable physical improvements. Patients imagine immune cells fighting illness and often recover faster. These findings are echoes of Cayce's timeless message. Mind is the builder, and what you hold in consciousness becomes the pattern of your experience. For him, bedtime was not just the end of the day, it was the moment to design tomorrow's health. So if you are listening to this now, imagine what could happen if you chose tonight to release anger, forgive freely, speak gratitude, and picture yourself strong and whole. Imagine the ripple this would create not only in your body, but in your family, your relationships, even in your community. Cayce taught that health is not an isolated gift. It spreads. A healed mind brings calm to a household, and a calm household strengthens society. The practice begins in silence, in darkness, in the secret dialogue you carry into sleep. And when enough people honor this moment, entire generations awaken stronger, wiser, and closer to the divine order Cayce devoted his life to unveiling. Cayce's message remains crystal clear. The final minutes before sleep are sacred, and neglecting them is like leaving the door of your home wide open in the middle of the night. Anything wandering in, the day's stress, bitterness, fear, can enter and take root in the subconscious. But if you guard that doorway with prayer, gratitude, and visualization, only light is allowed to cross. He often compared this moment to planting a garden. No farmer would scatter weeds and expect roses to grow. In the same way, no person should carry anger into sleep and expect to wake in peace. What you sow in thought becomes what you reap in health. This principle, Cayce assured, was as reliable as gravity. He also encouraged people to align their nightly practice with scripture. Verses of comfort, spoken with sincerity, acted as living vibrations that shaped the subconscious. Families reported choosing a single verse, repeating it softly before bed, and finding that not only did their health improve, but their dreams became filled with guidance and clarity. For Cayce, the Bible was not only history, it was a manual for aligning the mind with divine order, especially before sleep. He reminded seekers that Christ himself spoke of peace before resting, teaching us to close each day not with worry, but with surrender. What is extraordinary is how practical these teachings remain. Modern medicine may describe the effects with terms like parasympathetic activation or cognitive reprogramming, but Cayce's wisdom is more direct. Let go, forgive, give thanks, and see yourself whole. Do this each night, and the body will respond. Those who have tried know it is true. Stories of healing continue to surface, not just from the 1930s or 1940s, but from people today who apply the same principles and find that their lives begin to change. So I invite you, tonight, don't simply fall asleep. Take a few moments to program your mind for perfect health. Close your eyes and whisper forgiveness. Fill your heart with gratitude. Visualize light flowing through your body, restoring every cell. And above all, trust that the divine within you hears and responds. This is the timeless legacy of Edgar Cayce, a man who showed the world that the mysteries of healing are not hidden in distant temples, but available in the quiet minutes before we surrender to sleep. And if this message has touched your heart, share it in the comments. Tell us how you plan to use your last moments before sleep tonight. I will read every comment and mark it with a little heart, because building this community of seekers is part of the mission. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs healing in their life. Together, we can spread the wisdom that Cayce carried from the unseen into the seen, from mystery into daily practice. And perhaps in doing so we may discover that the greatest medicine has been within us all along, waiting for the moment we choose to use it.